Hi there, and welcome to the EX Conversation. In this episode, I sit down with Emily Esposito from Boston Beer Company, and we talk about how clarity in mass communication is the only way you're going to support your employees. We also hear about how Boston Beer Co. use their intranet and turned their least engaged employees into their most engaged employees. So let's get into it. Hi, Emily, and welcome to the EX Conversation.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great to have you on. This is the first podcast that I'm having a beer during, which I feel like this is the most acceptable one to have
This
it on.
is it honestly, I'd feel weird if you didn't. So,
Yeah,
this is how most of our meetings go. So this is great.
yeah. So we were just talking before you're like ramping up to Beer Fest at Boston Beer Club. Also, the we did a session together at Unite, our conference last year, and we had like the beer tastings, and it was so we could get the main stage ready for the awards, but it meant that every single person, because the beer tasting was in that room. I've never seen, there was more people in that than there was in the keynote.
Hey,
um,
we'll take it. I always say it's beer, not brain surgery. We try to make it like a more casual conversation because while there's still a lot to learn, we can still kind of enjoy it with a beverage sometimes. So we're
yeah.
not mad about it.
So we've spoken a few times over the years, but also did a session with you in Boston, which kind of gives an insight as to where you work. But tell me a little bit about your career history. Kind of what you brought you into comms and employee experience.
Definitely. So I am with Boston Beer Company. Actually, as of Tuesday, I've been here 11 years, which is
Wow.
insane. So I
Oh my
always say
God.
it's my first and only big kid job. But
Uh-huh.
I came right out of college. I was a marketing and Italian major and really just wanted to do something fun and kind of find a home for me. I didn't really want to bounce around. So I was very particular about where I wanted to land career wise. So I actually spent 6.5 years on the sales side.
Hmm.
So I started with our brands selling in Alabama. And so I covered all of our brands. I worked with wholesalers. I moved to Georgia for a little bit, moved back to Alabama, managed wholesalers, and then COVID hit, as everyone knows. And our way of hitting the market changed a little bit. The way I hit the market changed a little bit. So we were able to take a step back and really see where should we put our focus? What should our really like alignment be with our wholesalers? Our wholesalers are who distribute our product through the 3-tier system. And our number one customer is our wholesalers. So while we're creating these amazing brands like Truly, Twisted Tea, Sam Adams, Dogfish Head,
Hmm.
Angry Orchard, Sun Cruiser, which is
Yeah.
amazing, we needed to find better ways of communicating how to execute with our sales team. So I was very fortunate enough to work with Synovia Del Campo, who was my manager, and
Love
she
her.
had this bigger vision on how we can get sales this information from brand, because brand is very focused on the consumer, which is wonderful, which is what we need. Is this the right product for the right drinker? But we needed to figure out how to sell it to our wholesalers to figure out how to attack the market. So we had an opportunity to take a step back and look at all of our materials and find the right way to communicate in the best way that we could so that our salespeople are armed with all the information that they need, which is something coming from managing wholesalers was a very important thing for me as well, because I managed wholesalers who were kind of like, what are we doing here? What are you asking me? And without the right materials, I didn't have an answer for them. So I really enjoyed working with Zenobia and understanding her vision to be able to help bring it come to life.
Hmm. That's so exciting. And I feel like you've got quite like an atypical journey to that because you kind of got this like
Yes.
sales focus. Um, did that, was it easy to kind of like, did you naturally step into that role? Was it something that you applied for? Like, how did that kind of journey come about?
Gosh, it's a pretty funny story. So, Zenobia was recently promoted during this time, and I had only worked with her briefly. I was working with trade marketing in that time frame, and got an email saying Zenobia's been promoted. We're all excited for her. So I responded, no punctuation, nothing, and was like, "Hey, so excited for Zenobia. If there's ever an opportunity for her to grow a team, I'm absolutely interested." Got an email back immediately that was like, "No, but thanks." And I was like, "Okay, no big deal." All right, like tried to shoot my shot.
Yeah.
I got married, went on my honeymoon, and about a month later, I'm sorry, during that time frame was about a month. I got back from my honeymoon from an email that had forwarded me my unpunctuated email that I had sent that said, "Were you serious about this?" And I was like, I mean, I was. Why?" 'Cause then I got nervous. They're like, "We think that this could actually really work." So, that's I wish I had a cooler story for you, but that's literally how I kind of attached
Yeah.
myself to Novia, and we started working on this stuff. So, my advice to anyone who's always curious about roles within companies, I'm like, worst you could do is ask. You never
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So that's how we kind of got started. And one of the first things we wanted to tackle was an intranet and the right way to communicate materials out to sales. I thought that I could bring a very interesting perspective coming directly from sales and understanding what those needs are and having those connections to have someone as a part of these conversations with upper management and brands on what sales is really needing. Because without that, there really isn't someone sales focused in the room to be able to get the right materials.
And so this is kind of an interesting. So, like, actually, although I work for Unily, we don't actually speak that much about Unily on this podcast. But I kind of became aware of you through the Unite Awards and kind of the success story, I guess, that you had in um, supporting the sales function. And it was like a great story. It was a great submission because it started as like, I know this because like we have sellers at Unily. Typically, they are the worst adopters of internet technology,
Totally.
and
Absolutely.
you saw that problem and tried to fix it. And so yeah, like it was a cool story. But so I'll let you tell it how you kind of like turned them around.
Sure. So we had the idea for Brew Hub, which was kind of curated before I had joined over with Synovia, but we needed something more specific for sales. So Synovia and I worked together on what do we like? What are we trying to get out of this? We have tried other intranets in the past, and tried to find the right way of sharing that information, but it was so tedious, hard to get into, hard to get people to adopt. Obviously, as sales is typically not the most keen to find another place to find information. So we really worked hard to understand what the needs were. I sat in meetings and held meetings with a bunch of our coworkers in the sales field, being like, tell me what you want. What do you need? What would be beneficial? If we did this, would you like it? If we did this, would this be better for you? We did a bunch of different trials as well to understand what would work best because at the end of the day, if no one's going to use it, why are we going to waste our time on it?
Hmm.
And what ways could we make it better? Because we really wanted to make this one stick because we didn't want to be on the hamster wheel of recreating this thing over and over.
Yeah.
So we took a lot of that into account. We also leaned very, very heavily on IT. I'm so thankful that we did because we have some kind of brains behind the madness on our end with Brett Gruber and his team to understand what is the back end stuff that we are able to accomplish questions that we have, he's able to help us manage it the right way to get access for our coworkers. So it was a very much a effort by a lot of different teams to get this done. We worked with the rest of our internal comms team to make sure that our leadership team was also on board. And I think the key here to get the adoption where it is now is you have to have that top-down buy-in. We needed our executive leadership team to see the value of Brew Hub and continue to push it and bring it into a part of the conversation. And then that'll trickle down. And we did see that. We're very fortunate that it happened that way because that was all a part of the plan. We wanted them to speak about it. We wanted our coworkers to hear about it almost too much and just be like, fine, I'll do it. Leave me alone. And so we were able, for the sales specifically, we used our senior leadership team to help kick it off. A very funny video that we had them do to help us kind of launch it. And I think seeing those leadership members kind of outside of their element a little bit really grabbed everyone's attention. And then we just continued spreading that throughout all of the departments that we could. If there was an opportunity for us to share information, it wasn't a very quick transition from email to an intranet with what we call Brew Hub, but we
Hmm.
tried to incorporate it as smoothly as possible. With our annual company meeting, which is called Beer Fest, we then put our planning materials on this website. So when we are in the fall, when we have our meeting, we're like, hey guys, here's everything we're going to do for the following year. And here's where you find all this information. We continue to create pages and sites that direct people to a one-stop shop. And that
Hmm.
was the goal overall, was just if people have questions, if they get into their office on Monday or to their computers and start their day, where should they start to gather all that information? And that's what we've kind of created with Brew Hub.
Yeah, I love it, and the data supports it. But the thing that's etched onto my brain is the leadership. comms example. If anyone ever asks me like, "Oh, like, what do you think is a good idea?" I'm like, "I know Boston Beer did something great." A little bit about it, I know, because I feel like it's very difficult to bring leadership out of their comfort zone sometimes and to deliver something that is cuts through the noise, shall we say. So
Totally.
how did you get that to happen? Tell us a bit about it.
Oh my gosh. So we created a video and we created lyrics to kind of a riff off of Bohemian Rhapsody. And we had our time, who was our chief sales officer, and then one of our division directors who actually is now transitioned into the chief sales officer role, which works long term for us, which is
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
All kind of got together and we put together these lyrics that kind of explain what Brew Hub, the sales site is, how to use it, why to use it. And we used a partner of ours to create this video to kind of kick it off. We shared it on our all sales call when we launched Brew Hub, and it was just funny, silly. Couldn't believe we got them to do it in the way that they did. And I think that kind of vulnerability of them, or really like wanting and willing to kind of expose themselves a little bit because they believed in this and also were very kind to help us try to get this launched, was a different approach. Instead of just an email saying, "Hey guys, we launched this new site. Here's how you should use it." We pretty much kicked off with
Yeah.
this video. And then I held sessions that we called WTF with Emily. And I held these video sessions that kind of walk everybody through how to use it, how it affects different coworkers, what you could get out of it. And I think that helped as well, just getting the hands-on experience, because you can look at something all day and be like, yeah, that sounds great, but how do I actually use it for me? Having someone come from sales like I did really broke down why they would use it and how the benefit to them would exist. And so it was kind of a multi-step piece to get everyone to really buy into it.
I love that. Say it, like, "What the fuck" with them or WTF. Can I swear on the
Yeah,
podcast?
yeah,
No.
that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
I don't know if I can swear on this podcast. I've never sworn, but I
Oh,
probably have
well,
sworn. Yeah.
I'm
No,
comfortable. So that's
but
great. The
um,
barrier's been broken.
yeah, the barriers were broken. Yeah. And you kind of like, I love all of those things because when you kind of zoom out on like each of those individual bits, of course they're all cool individually, but like when I kind of zoom out on the story, what you see is like great examples of consumer grade internal communication. When there's like so much out there, like you have to be so creative in like what you do and do it in a way where it's like people understand. And I think that's iconic. Yeah. So I think it's really great. And I kind of want to think about, so you've done some really cool stuff. You've seen the data prove that as well. You've seen like your sales team becoming like your top adopters, right?
Yes, they are. Yeah, we have a 98% adoption rate from our sales coworkers, 93 for the rest of the organization. And it just continues to grow. We're trying to introduce new things into the site. Like we added social earlier last year. We're adding more social sites. We've actually had a few other departments reach out to us about different ways that we could utilize it. So we just continue adding different pieces to it to see how much better it can get.
Love that. So one of the things I do on this podcast is kind of like try and pull out a kind of thing that you think we could improve or that you're passionate about in employee experience or communication. Kind of, you've kind of got an atypical experience of internal communication and it's quite creative and different. In your kind of experience, what's something that you think you're passionate about in internal communication or you think we could make better in the industry?
Think that one of the key things when it comes to internal communication is you have to have the clarity and alignment to know what you're trying to get your coworker to understand. You have to think about it from all angles. It may make sense to you, but that's because you've been working on it for weeks. But to your other coworker who is in the market trying to read an email on the go, how are they going to interpret this and how can they very quickly utilize it? So, what I've learned is that over communication does not equal clarity. You have to consider all angles that this information is going to be consumed, how it's being consumed, and when, to then be able to make it worthwhile. So while we have all these amazing sites and apps that we can use to get all of this pulled together, we have to be very thoughtful about the end user and how that's being communicated. And I think that's something that can very easily get lost in this process because as an internal communications specialist, it's one of those things that makes sense in your head because you understand the intention behind it. But someone who's in the market trying to put an event together and then is also reading this on the side and has to pick up their kids at 4, they don't have the time to sit there and process it the way that you have. So making sure that you are very clear on what the message is that they're trying to absorb is key.
Mhm. So do you think that, so I didn't study marketing, but like as I started to work in marketing, people taught me this idea of like the rule of seven, which is that um if you want someone to really like read or understand something, you have to like hit them seven different times across different channels. Do you think that kind of rule is outdated for employees or not necessary? Or like maybe bringing out bad practice? What do you think?
Ooh, I think it's very circumstantial.
Hmm.
I think it depends on how your coworkers absorb information and where they absorb it. We have some coworkers who are in the office at their desk versus some that are in the car, and they all have different use cases for it. So specifically speaking to sales versus the rest of the company, we translate that information very differently. So we have company roundup calls versus all sales calls. So our company roundup calls, for example, we explain a program that's going on within a brand. Hey, we're doing this amazing thing with Sun Cruiser and the US Open, and we're excited to partner with them. And here are some really cool things you'll see in commercials or on site at the event, and all these like very high top level type of activations versus the conversation with the sales team is, we're doing this. It's great. Here's how you execute locally. Here's how you execute if you're on site. And here's kind of how you present this to your wholesaler or to your retailers on how we can all work together to make this um, worthwhile and also generate sales. At the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So I think you have to consider your audience when you do that because there is not a one size fits all when you're trying to market that information.
So you kind of said like this idea of like providing clarity, understanding the audience. How do you validate that that message has cut through and that it's been understood and that you understand your audience correctly? Because I think all these things are kind of, it's like a moving goalpost, right? So
Absolutely.
how do you go about doing that?
It's the questions that we get back and the way that we see the execution, I think is key for us to understand if it's working or not. It doesn't always work, that's for sure. And we have to constantly find other ways. But we try to present the information that we have in a way that's actionable. And the way that we're able to see that work is if it's actually being executed in market. So we create all these amazing plans for our coworkers to hit the market around a program. We launched the social site earlier last year, and now we host competitions on there. We have coworkers upload what's going on in the market. What are their activations? What do their displays look like? And if it's fitting in line with what was being presented, then we can see that they were able to absorb it, the information in the right way. We also do our all sales calls and we have Q&A at the end. Ask us questions, tell us what you need. And if we also keep a very close eye on feedback that we receive. We have an employee engagement survey. Myself, Zenobia, our team is always open for feedback. So if we notice that there's kind of a trend, we're like, obviously something didn't hit right here. How can we pivot or adjust that? Or we see that it's working and it's landing and our leadership team continues to push it down. I think that's also a very big key. But we do these larger initiatives, we always involve our sales leadership team with to make sure everyone is aligned. That's to me is the biggest key here when it comes to making sure things are executed. You have to have the buy-in. You have to make sure you are all on the same page and that alignment is in place for it to then be pushed out.
I've got a selfish question now because you work in a fast moving industry. I also work in a fast moving industry in
Yeah.
tech. Now on the product side,
Hmm.
and move so fast. There are always we like innovate stuff and trial things. We socialize them with customers and maybe take them in a different direction. There are new products that come out soon, and um, like clarity in fast moving industries is tough. And I'm sure there isn't a silver bullet. But like, how do you how do you make sure you have clarity when things are so fast moving?
We try to develop programs and roll out plans that make sense across the board. We have trialed with new products that we want to launch. We do test markets versus years ago, we used to just create a product, be like, wow, this is great. Let's roll it out nationally and see what happens. We've learned that that's not always the right place to start. So we have test markets where we utilize our brand teams, our innovation teams, our sales teams to figure out what is the right plan to go forward. We have products that we're working on in these test markets to see, is this the right approach? Is this the right consumer? are we wanting to do this? Is this the right way for this to work long term? Because we've had some really, really successful brands. The seltzer market a couple years ago absolutely took off. And we're very fortunate to have Truly be, a leader in that. Versus we've had some other products that we've tried and we're kind of like, maybe that wasn't the right move, and that's okay. We kind of take everything as a learning curve of, okay, this worked, but this didn't. So when it is a very fast moving market, that's for sure. So it requires a lot. That is also a team that is much bigger than me that puts that together. So we have innovation teams, we have our brand teams, our leadership team. Everyone comes together to figure out what the right rollout approach is for something like that. Once we decide that it is something that is going to hit our wholesalers, our sales coworkers, and the market, we kind of then are able to come in to figure out how do we approach the market in this way that sales can make it actionable, because it's also on top of what their other focuses are on as well. So it's tricky. There's really not a one size fits all for that,
Yeah, yeah.
but we try to condense all the information that they need in a way that is digestible for them and their wholesalers on how to attack the market in this way.
That's so interesting because actually that totally aligns with your earlier point around like not blasting unnecessarily, being very intentional about what you communicate.
Yes.
Because if you communicated about everything all the time, I'm sure there are loads of products, innovations, changes happening that no doubt the key stuff will get missed. So you have to be like so intentional about what you're hitting the cells with at what point in time.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are loads of products and changes happening, and that like actually, if you took that rule of seven and every change or every update you blasted seven times, it would be a lot.
It's a lot. One of the biggest things that we talk about is learning how to flex and adapt. And
Hmm.
that's part of our industry. That's part of what we do within our values as a company is how do we flex and adapt together to figure out what the right move is. We all also go in with an understanding that not everything's going to work, and that's okay.
Hmm.
And sometimes we'll have home runs, which is amazing. But there are going to be some trials and tribulations in there that we're going to have to work on together and understand that the end result of what we do is much bigger than these smaller ones.
Hmm. I think yeah, it's very cool. I think I get to uh, when I'm in the US as well. I kind of feel a bit proud when I'm like, oh, a few years ago I was at the Brave Stadium a couple of years ago, and they had like this big Sun Cruiser
Yeah,
section. Like, oh, I love that. I was like, I feel like loyalty to it.
definitely.
So I want to move on to kind of like a fun section. It's kind of like quick fire,
Yeah.
just hot takes and things like that. First question I have for you is, what's your favorite drink from Boston Beer Co?
Oh,
Starting off.
man. Oh, I have so many. Okay, so I'm gonna go beer and then non-beer. My
Okay.
favorite beer of all time ever is called Porch Rocker. It is from Sam Adams, and it is
Uh-huh.
a Radler. So it's essentially like a half beer, half lemonade, and it
Mhm.
is a seasonal for us. So it's only available in the summer, and it is just the crispiest, best beer of all time. We actually at our brewery in Boston last year they did a frozen Porch Rocker, which was pretty much
Ooh.
the greatest thing ever. But that's my favorite beer. Oh man, there's so many different brands. It depends on the occasion for me, but also Sun Cruiser is so good. We have a blueberry lemonade that we just recently released, and it is amazing. It's very light, and it is just so crisp and refreshing. So I'm definitely like a moody drinker. It depends on where I am or to what I want to drink.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a beer, it would definitely be Port Rocker.
That's like your internal comms values as well. Like know the audience, know the
Right.
surround.
I need to read the room to know what kind of drink I want.
um, and, and what sort of what kind of like skill do you think is like underrepresented in the industry or in your sort of role?
Ooh, um, I would say that engagement on whatever you're working on and doesn't always equal like understanding or happiness. So you have to make sure that while the engagement may be there, and that's wonderful, are people really consuming that information? And doing the research to make sure the comprehension is there is key. And sometimes can be a miss because if your numbers look high, you're like, "Yeah, we're doing great. This is awesome." But I think taking that extra step for feedback, welcoming feedback, hearing feedback, is can be very underutilized. We rely very heavily on our engagement survey for our company on changes that we can make going into the next year. and we put a lot of effort into making sure that we are doing what our coworkers are asking, or at least considering it and seeing where our gaps are or what the opportunity is there. So I think that's something that could always use a little bit of extra help.
I love the word comprehension. I feel like it's used at school, but like never
I
again.
know.
But it's it's like an important word because like it is like the kind of antidote to this like checkbox communications, rollouts, project plans that don't get the right outcome. Is like, did people understand? Yeah. So and the other thing I was going to ask about was this idea of like so in the UK, we have this kind of like room 101, which is this kind of like mythical room of like things that people don't like or don't want. And
Mhm.
so, like, what's one thing or concept from the workplace that you would put in the trash?
Ooh, I feel like my answer is maybe gonna be the same, that
Hmm.
engagement isn't comprehension.
Hmm.
And I think you look at the numbers again and think, "Wow, this is great." If I were to look at our 98% engagement, I'd be like, "Done. Our work
Yeah.
here is finished. Let's go."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
while that may be the case for the time being, there's gonna be dips, and if I'm just resting on my laurels of, like, "I've hit 98% and there's nothing left for me to do here," instead of doing further research into what other ways can we continue to improve or strategize, for us, this intranet and the communication piece of it, it's not gonna stay there. So I think one of the things that we could throw in the trash is really just, like, not being satisfied with hitting numbers being enough, because it's
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
more than that.
Obsession with numbers that don't give the right outcomes, or yeah, just kind of like seeing
Yeah,
a
it's not
a
black and
goal and
white.
then uh-huh. Love it. And my last question for you actually comes from our last guest. So we have this tradition where we take a question from the last guest for the next guest, and that question is, how are you making sure that employee experience for people who are not wired is equal to the same as those who are?
Ooh, we have to find different ways of reaching them,
Hmm.
and understanding that coworkers absorb information differently is key. So we have coworkers, like I said, that are in the office that are on the computers every day. Sales kind of lives on their phones or their iPads. We have to find a different way to reach them versus our brewery coworkers who are only maybe like 12-hour shifts and they are not on a computer at all. They're working with machinery. So we have to bring in different parts of different teams to make sure we're hitting them correctly, and you're not gonna know it unless you're there hands-on, hearing from them how to gather that information. We use Screen Cloud in our office and our breweries to reach coworkers in a different way. We do these, roundup calls to see if we can reach people differently, or all hands or town halls.
Hmm.
So, there's different ways that you have to do it. It's not a one size fits all. And I think that is the key, is to there's no blanket way of communicating with, especially with an organization like ours that is all very different every day. Some people are hands-on in a warehouse versus some are hosting events at a bar, or you have HR who is in the office in Boston. We have our coworkers giving tours at our breweries. It's all very different. So we have to find different ways of communicating with them, and it's not always going to be an email or a story on Brew Hub. It could be a lot of different things. So understanding how to do that is important.
Absolutely. Final question, actually, which I said I did the final question. This is the final. Um, Obviously, you've been at Boston Beer for 11 years now.
Mhm,
Um, what's something, and you've had like a really interesting journey that you kind of tailored yourself as well. And
mhm.
what's something you wish you'd known at the start of that journey that you think would have paid dividends?
Man, I didn't think the journey would take me here. I wish
Mhm.
I could go back and tell myself just to see what happens instead of putting a plan together. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned now that I wish I would know then, as someone who is very type A, wants to cross everything off the list, is that a to-do list is never finished. There's always something different, or a different way of thinking, or a different way of creating something that is going to extend that to-do list. You're never going to sit down at the end of the day and be like, done. I'm set up for success. And I'm very thankful for knowing that now, because I like that. I like that challenge of being like, how could I have done that differently? And my managers, they challenge me with, how could we have done this differently?
Hmm.
And that keeps me on my toes. But I think going back and understanding that instead of rushing to always feel like you're getting to the end of your list, instead of just taking a step back and looking at it more broadly, um, I wish I would have known that then. But I'm very thankful to how it brought me here.
Does that mean as a type B, I don't need to make any to-do lists?
No, you're good. Screw the list.
Well, hey, I've
Roll
got
with it.
any co-workers watching this. Don't expect me.
No, no.
Emily, thank you so much. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Always love chatting and working with you.
Yeah.
And the next time we can share a Samuel Adams or something. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds great.
Nice. Thank you.
If you enjoyed that episode, then remember to click to subscribe, because there's much more where that came from. And let us know in the comments which bits you've enjoyed and found super insightful. Also, if you would like to be part of the EX conversation and feature on the podcast, then please get in touch.